first of all, I guess maybe we can just do some quick benchmarking. As a
Sure.
CFO that's seen so many consumer brands, what would you say is like a
hmm
healthy inventory level for a consumer brand, whether in terms of ratios or whatever metrics that you've seen in the past?
Yeah. Um, sure. I'll give some general ones. Everybody knows that your order lead and lag times play a big factor, right? So, um, for brands where they have to order and they receive it 4 months later, you obviously are going to have like 120 days worth of inventory in stock, probably maybe 100 to 120. Um, that you kind of just have to when the lead times are that long. Um, I would say if the lead times aren't that long, the aim would be 90 or less typically. Um, there are people out there that say you should have a negative cash conversion cycle. It's just it's not realistic for most companies. But could you have a 30 or 60-day cash conversion cycle? That would be healthy, to be honest. So I would say, the target inventory on hand is, look, as low as you can get it reasonably would be the idea. But under 90 is good. Under 60 is best. 90 to 120 is the average. 120 sucks, but sometimes you just have to.
And it's really all about balancing risk versus reward, right? What is the
Totally.
risk of you not having enough inventory when a huge spike in demand comes versus you know, holding that buffer, but not actually
hmm
taking advantage of it or leveraging it to generate more sales. So uh, I guess from
Yes.
that perspective, um, when you think of the overstocking issue with brands that you've seen that have overstocked, what are some of the like hidden
hmm
financial impacts of overstocking? Like, what are some of the opportunity cost of capital
Oh God,
that you've seen?
so many. Yeah, so many. So just so to paint the picture, when you overstock, you're taking a huge bag of money and you're putting it on a shelf and you're not allowed to touch it, even though you need it for your staff or to market. It's stuck in this bag on the shelf and you can't touch it. So overstocking is probably it's a real business killer. And it's something that is not on everyone's radar all the time. Um, there's a few ways that this hurts you. So one, you overstock a style, the style goes out of fashion. Now what do you fucking do with that style? You have to just blow it out on clearance, right? There's one. Um, where you could otherwise take this bag of money and get more customers, it's stuck. It's on the shelf. So there's unacquired customers that you could get that the money's stuck on the shelf, so you can't do it.
Do you have any, does this advice change depending on the type of products you're selling, types of industry? Because, for
Yes.
example, you said with clothing
Yeah.
or like apparel, jewelry, this kind of stuff, there's that allure sometimes when you stock out, right? But, be curious to
hmm
your thoughts there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so a couple things, right? If you're a very high gross margin business, it's okay to have overstock, right? Like I have some clients where their gross margins are like 80%. Well, that 20% cost of goods fucking stock however much stock for 6 months. It doesn't matter because it's such a small amount. Um, if your margins are like 60 or below, like you have to be very, very careful. And 40, it's like you better be really good, right? Um, in terms of what is the type of product, I mean, um, eh, again, if the demand is elastic as you add bundles or discounts, then it's okay, right? If your demand is inelastic, you have to be more careful. If stuff costs more, be more careful. But I don't know if I have very generalized advice, but I would just say like those two things. If the demand is elastic, go ahead. If the prices are low, also go ahead. The cost is lower, go ahead. There's less risk, right? But it's all about like that mapping stuff onto a P&L and on your cash flows and kind of where can you live with yourself. And if the market turns and you have 3 months extra stock, can you live with that? Like that's what you got to check on.
Absolutely. So I guess just to summarize from a macro perspective, it's about where is the market today in terms of both in terms of
hmm
volatility, in terms of the supply situation, as well as uh, from a idiosyncratic perspective, the two factors you mentioned were margin, gross margin, and
hmm
the elasticity of demand, right? So being able to consider those four
Yep.
factors together, that's something that a
hmm
really good CFO should be able to help the team makes.
Yeah, well, and so like when we answer this question for clients, right? I'm not going, what do I think? I don't know. I'm like measuring it, right? So I'm opening up their forecast and I'm going, okay, well, this year the plan was to do this much revenue, this much profit, and have this much in the bank. If you buy 2 months extra stock and demand doesn't go with it, I can measure how much cash flow you have. If demand goes properly, I can measure how much cash you're supposed to have. So when we answer this question, we're like running 4 or 5 different scenarios to check, what does cash look like? What does margin look like? Are you in the hole? Are you, because again, if someone buys 2 months extra and demand flattens and they still have 500 grand in the bank, well, it's okay then, right? But if they order 2 months extra and demand flattens and they have no money, well, that person has to be careful. So it's contextual with the 4 things you said, but also to the own financial structure and health of the business too. And your CFO can check. Like Dan, you're like, I want to order an extra month worth of stock. I'm like, okay, cool. How much cash do you need? Boop, boop, boop. Check it. Fine. And what happens if demand doesn't materialize? Boop, boop, boop. Okay, no, it sucks, or it's fine. You can measure.